both my online and offline kids interacting, mainly through online discussions, guided practice, and critical thinking. Let's talk about it. Another way for students to interact, whether virtual or in person, whatever, is through Kahoot and some online practice that sort of teaches critical thinking. So I'm sure you've heard of Kahoot, so I won't go into a whole lot of depth. But what I like about Kahoot is probably what most people like is it's game based. Both my virtual and in-person students could get on it. I would just get on Zoom. I'd put the Kahoot code up there, and then boom, they're off to the races. And what it did was teach kids without them knowing. They would just be working so hard and not realizing, oh, I'm learning the material. And so we would play a Kahoot game right before the test. After implementing Kahoot reviews and I just put them on Google Classroom and left it on there. And I would just add to that same Kahoot review game every week. And so at the end, it was good because it gave the kids somewhere to study material when it was time for the final exam. They could always go through and practice. And a lot of kids say, well, some kids are cheating because they do the Kahoot 100 times before the actual Kahoot game. But for me, it's not really about cheating. It's about learning the material. And they would actually be learning the material. If you can see here, this was a post I made congratulating one of my students who did well in the boss battle, which is a type of game in GimKit where all of the students work to beat one student. That one student is usually the student who does well all the time. So all of my students were going up against this one student, and that one student still won, hence the congratulations here. And so you see these class comments, and I do encourage you to turn on class comments because it facilitates discussion as well. And so you see here, one of my students wrote back in Latin here. He's learning Latin. And ultimately, he ends up telling that student, hey, you should prepare yourself for next Friday because it's going down. And so this helped that particular student here. His grade increased due to the review games. Prior to that, he was really struggling. So the review games really do help, and it helps them learn without them thinking that they're learning. Another online interactive activity was using Nearpod to do graphing. All right, so hopefully in my geography class, they were working on absolute location, and so I would maybe put a star somewhere like that. And then they would have to tell me what's the absolute location of that particular community. And so you can see them in real time drawing on this. And then, most of them would either type their answer 90 degrees, whatever they're going to write. And so if I switch back to teacher view, it's going to show me that. And so then I would display their image and say, why is that right? Why is it wrong? And you would get all kinds of responses and things like that. Another online practice or way they interacted with each other was through the class jobs. You would think class jobs, how was that? But I had virtual and in-person jobs. So an in-person job might be the janitor or, paper collector or something like that. And I had virtual jobs. So that person might create a news report for the day and say, this is what's happening in the news, or a meteorologist who would tell, what was the weather for today. And so after they would watch this video on Zoom or on Google Classroom, wherever I put it, then the students had to give feedback. They had to say, hey, I want you to include this in next week's report, or hey, da-da-da-da-da. I also had a chat monitor. This person would monitor the chat for me. And so I would say, what do you guys need from the chat monitor? And they would say, hey, she doesn't respond quick enough, or, da-da-da-da-da. Or she should say, hey, I've already sent that over, because they wouldn't know, and they would just keep sending the same message to her. So it taught them ways to interact. Sometimes they would just like the video that the student created. And so the student knew, oh, I'm doing a good job. Let's just keep it up. But also students will give feedback. Hey, add this in there. Create these. Make that, da-da-da-da. Those are some ways you created some practice opportunities for students and just some ways for them to interact with one another. Hopefully you learned something in this video. Feel free to reach out via Instagram or Facebook and let me know. Bye!